is to provide technical assistance and educational services to communities that are involved in some sort of a revitalization program. We're going to talk a little bit today about the different forms that revitalization can take. But suffice it to say that for most of our existence, the biggest part of what we have done has been to work with the Department of Community and Economic Development in providing technical assistance to communities that are in the Commonwealth's Main Street and more recently Elm Street programs. Our staff consists of 4 full-time and 4 part-time people. We travel all over the Commonwealth providing services to communities, and I'll talk a little bit about how we do that in just a bit. For those of you, for me, I'm a Pittsburgh kid. Grew up in Pittsburgh, went to the University of Pittsburgh, got a master's degree in urban and regional planning, worked in Allegheny County at the Allegheny County Redevelopment Authority for 17 years, went to New Jersey and worked as the executive director of a business improvement district in Rahway, New Jersey for 2.5 years. And then I came back to Pennsylvania in 2000 and started at the Pennsylvania Downtown Center at that point, so I've been there now for just a little over 13 years. Let me talk to you a little bit about what I handed out to you. And I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the Main Street, and I want to make sure we distinguish between the Main Street approach to community revitalization and the Main Street program as it is practiced here in Pennsylvania and, quite honestly, in different states around the country. The Main Street approach, which I've kind of laid out on this first chart for you, is actually a program that was developed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation back in 1980. It has been for all of that time. And it's kind of bounced around within the trust, different places, but it has always been sort of a subcomponent of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. As many nonprofits have, and I'll get into this a little bit more in a few minutes, there have been some changes that have taken place, just as I'm sure you are seeing changes happening at the trust generally. The same sort of changes are taking place within the National Main Street Center. So the document that you have in front of you is essentially an overview of the Main Street approach. Now, you notice across the top it says organization, design, economic restructuring, and promotion. Those are the original, what they call 4 points of Main Street as they were originally written by the staff of the National Main Street Center. I'm sure Mary Means has spent lots of time here in Lancaster County over the years. Mary Means was the initial author, that often called the godmother, of the Main Street approach to community revitalization. She's still involved in the effort as a consultant in, she works out of Alexandria, Virginia. So, you know, it's for many people the most common aspects of any revitalization program are kind of the physical aspects, and that all of those things are covered under design. And a big part of what you see is actually handled by that component. And in most organizations, there is a committee established. While there's a board of directors that governs the overall organization, there's a committee established for each of these 4 points. We're becoming less and less doctrinaire about the titles. You know, we don't so much worry about a design committee or an economic restructuring committee, but more so that this comprehensive approach to revitalization is being taken so that something is happening in all 4 of these areas. For you folks involved in preservation activities, Certainly the major component of what we would do would be under the design. Historic preservation, facade renovations, major building rehabilitations, all kind of fall under that aspect of design. Also, issues such as historic district designations, both national and local, zoning issues as those may impact revitalization efforts, including historic overlays such as you have in Lancaster. So there is as a matter of fact, we clearly state to people that Main Street is economic revitalization that is grounded in historic preservation, and so we continually try and continually struggle with the question of getting people to understand the importance of historic preservation as a critical part of their Main Street effort. Now, you'll notice over on the far right, there is a column there labeled Safe, Clean, and Green. Starting in 1999, Representative Bob Freeman from Easton sort of recognized that the Main Street approach, if it was working well, and it was working well, is working well, in terms of downtown revitalization, then why wouldn't the same sort of approach work in the neighborhoods that surround these central business districts? And being from Easton, he recognized a fact of life that happens in many, many communities, not only in Pennsylvania but across the country. And that is that oftentimes, even though a business district revitalization effort may be going quite well, oftentimes people are reluctant to travel through some of the neighborhoods that they have to go to get back downtown. Problems of crime, deterioration, blight are as prevalent in the neighborhoods that surround many business districts as they are in the downtown itself. And so he formulated a program called the Elm Street program, which was essentially Main Street taken to the neighborhood level. And once again, it is a Pennsylvania-specific program. There is no national Elm Street Center. It's certainly being looked at by a number of other states and by the National Trust, but it does not exist in a formal way outside of the Commonwealth. We at the Pennsylvania Downtown Center were given the responsibility by the Department of Community and Economic Development to sort of develop the concept of Elm Street. And it is very, very similar to Main Street, with the exception that Mary Means, who we retained to come in and help us develop Elm Street, said that she wanted to add a fifth component. And so in that far right column you see Safe, Clean, and Green. And so, one of the fundamental differences between the two, and by the way, increasingly we are encouraging Main Street organizations to adopt this fifth point.